Democrats used to do this, right? They would be like, we're going to bring in experts. We're going to review the books. We're going to look at to see, which of these programs are outdated or not efficient anymore, not working. We're going to offer people severance and let them go. Sure. I'm for all of that. Right. I'm for all that. It is, but these guys have taken that from us because what they are trying to do with this is not actually make the government more efficient. They're trying to bully good and smart people out of the government so that they can replace them with Buckley Carlson, Tucker's son, or whoever. Hello and welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. We have an insane week ahead of us. The confirmation hearing of RFK Jr. is happening as I speak. Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard's hearings are set for tomorrow. This pod will be on the normal schedule, but we're doing some special programming to accommodate all of the madness. So mark this stuff down. Tonight at 8 p.m., The Next Level is live for Bulwark Plus members. So keep an eye out for that link. It will be in the podcast feed for everybody on Thursday morning. Thursday, we are live on YouTube basically all day. Will and Sam in the morning, a little Mona cameo, JVL and I in the afternoon. At the end of all of the hearings, we'll have a wrap up with the whole gang for Bulwark Plus members only. You can join at thebulwark.com/subscribe. If you join, you also get this pod ad free, and you get a special secret podcast called Just Between Us, hosted by our next guest, policy editor at the Bulwark, my friend Mona Charen. Hey, Mona, welcome back to the pod. Great times, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. The only thing that makes it bearable is that we have each other.
That's true. I'm happy to have you. And I guess this is an announcement for a couple of listeners who noticed the meowing on yesterday's podcast. I have a cat, too. So we have each other, the cat. That many listeners have been upbraiding me for listening to the cat food advertisement where I say we have a neighborhood cat where we feed. And they're like, that's your cat now. You have to take it in. Yeah. And while I was snowed out in New York, my family took it in without me. So, we have each other and a stray cat. So
there is something in the Bulwark water because JVL also got a cat like in the last few weeks. So.
I know, a stray as well. I don't know. Yes. We can't help the people. So maybe we're going to help the feline community. All right. You've got a new pod, Mona Charen Show. You've had a couple of episodes now. So I want to give you a chance to talk about that, what the goal is, and then we'll get into the Parade of Horribles.
Yeah. So the podcast is, I was reluctant to part with Beg to Differ, which I loved doing. Yeah. We did that for 5 years, my great colleagues. But
it's crazy. It was 5 years?
It was 5 years.
Holy
Amazing,
cow.
Right? I know. We've been living in this reality for such a long time. But anyway, but I felt like with the election and the new era that we're living in, I felt a strong desire to have a podcast where I can go deeper on some of these issues and talk to experts and devote, one podcast per subject matter, or at least per guest, and let the guest have a little bit more opportunity. So, yeah, so far we've had two, and I think it's going well.
Yeah, and the most recent one, which I was listening to, is Steve Vladeck. It was interesting because he got into sort of the legal questions of it all, and there's just so much happening right now. We had the article this morning in the Bulwark from Don Kettle, who's like, there's just this high-speed power grab. It's hard to keep track of everything, and part of that is because a lot of the stuff is going to get challenged. So I don't know, what were your main takeaways for that conversation with Steve?
So. I thought it would be useful to just go into what is the source of the president's authority? He has authority under Article 2 as commander in chief, for example, and he's supposed to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, which is actually a limitation on his power rather than a elaboration of it. But he also has power through legislation. And unfortunately, as Steve and I talked about, the Congress has been shoveling power out the door now for decades. They have been creating agencies, creating laws that give all of the discretion about how things should be done to executive agencies. And so that is a huge problem because if you get an irresponsible president, he has already been given vast discretion. So, for example, on tariffs, all he has to do is say, well, it's a national emergency or it's a matter of national security, and therefore I have to impose steel tariffs on Canada. Like, that dangerous country to our north, our severe enemy.
With their beady little eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's that. There's the fact that they have given him all of this power. But now, Tim, we are in a totally new world where not only is he, being incredibly aggressive about the powers that he definitely has, but he is being unbelievably transgressive in seizing powers that he definitely does not have. At least he didn't under our system. And we're at a moment of truth, honestly, getting right to the nub of it, because if there is no resistance in the courts and in public opinion to his attempts to simply rewrite laws unilaterally, decide how to spend federal funds on his own say-so, with even though Congress has already passed and appropriated funds for a particular purpose, then our republic is, let us say, it's transformed. I don't want to say it's over, but it's pretty damn serious.
Yeah, I had David French on, I guess, on Friday. I don't know how long Beg to Differ went. I don't know who I talked to when, but he pointed out that this court, at least the first time through, the court's been remade a little bit since Trump's first term with the Coney Barrett seat, but rejected the administration more times than any president had been rejected since, I think, FDR. And so he was maybe a little bit more bullish than sometimes you hear from some of our friends on the left about the fact that that might be the case again. I don't know. I was kind of wondering what you think, what Steve thought. And because there are all these challenges are going to come down the pike, whether it's and we're going to get into the offering of severance and the mass firings of people in the administration and the grant freezing, like all that stuff is going to end up, the immigration stuff, like all that stuff's going to come across their robed desks here eventually. So I'm wondering how you assess that.
So there are two aspects of this. First is, what will the Supreme Court do regarding these assertions of presidential power? Will they become creative and expand presidential scope as they did with the immunity decision? Or will they put their feet down, their collective 18 feet?
18.
And say, no. I mean, we do, after all, have other branches of government, and you can't just trample what they've done. So that's the first question. And Steve Vladeck was more bullish than some people that are in our orbit about the chances there. He also, along with David French, thinks, look, the court did push back a lot on Trump in the first Trump term. And he does think that there's some spine, some steely determination there. I think it's not too much to say. That's his view. I told him, look, I would have said that before the immunity decision, but now my confidence in their fealty to the Constitution has been really badly shaken. So that's the first piece. We'll see. Will they actually assert, the primacy of the constitutional system? And then the second question, which is maybe as big or bigger, is, will Trump obey? He did in the first term. He obeyed the court's orders. If he doesn't this time around, if he, in obedience to what J.D. Vance recommended, right? J.D. Vance said he should just say to the court, you've made your decision, now enforce it, a la President Jackson, who probably never said that, but that's never mind. But Andrew Jackson reputed to have said the Supreme Court has made its decision, now let them enforce it. J.D. Vance said that that's exactly what Trump should do. And Tim, I don't know what would happen in this country if Trump did that. I don't know. I don't have the sense that people would rise up on their hind legs and say, no, 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 now you've gone too far. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm trying to just think one day at a time. I'm trying to think about RFK today. I hear that though. I don't. It's hard to just have lived the last 10 days and think that there is a groundswell of people prepared to stand up and oppose Donald Trump if he disobeys an order that's kind of procedural and arcane that doesn't affect their lives, right? You know what I mean? Like maybe there's a certain type of thing, sending the troops in places. I think that there's certain types of things that I think would awaken the American people from their slumber, but on some of this stuff, and if he says, sorry, I disagree, I can fire people, I can fire bureaucrats at will, and the Supreme Court says no, and he's like, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm taking away their pass key codes to get inside the EEOB or whatever office building they work in. It's hard to see anybody. It's hard to see mass protests over that.
Okay, let me try something out on you.
Okay.
One of the reasons that Biden was a failure is that people wanted him to restore normalcy, and they didn't get normalcy. They felt. Trump was reelected to bring prices down and get things under control on the border. But the fact is that
make sure that prisoners were single gender only.
Oh, yeah, right.
That was the third item. The border, right. Making sure our prisons had boys in one prison and girls in the other prison. That was pretty key.
Well, actually, I'm for that.
Same.
That.
That's fine with it. Well, I'm for it in most cases. I don't know. I think that we could probably make some case by case exceptions, but but anywho, that was the third prong of his mandate.
Yes. Okay. So. And, the overwhelming majority of what the federal government does, it doesn't do through federal bureaucrats. It does through contractors, because actually over the years, like Congress has wanted to hide how much the federal government does. So they mostly do things by doing grants and stuff to private contractors who actually carry out the work of the federal government. Well, when you look down the list of things that are going to be affected by this freeze, this is going to piss off a lot of people. Like, all right, first of all, 20% of Americans get their health care or their services in retirement homes paid for by Medicaid. That's not excluded from this freeze, right? They only excluded Medicare and Social Security, but Medicaid, 20% of the country. Every Meals on Wheels program, every Head Start program, there are a million things that actually will touch people's lives. Now, we don't know how long this freeze is going to go on, but it could be that all of this disruption is going to be perceived as not, the dawn of a golden age, but chaos.
Yeah, I want to talk about this. So let me just tick through for the people who've decided that they don't want to follow the minute by minute of this and are getting their just afternoon updates here on their constitutional at the Bulwark podcast. Like among the things that you mentioned that have been in these executive orders that have led to this chaos and a lot of uncertainty, as you mentioned, this freeze on grants that was. And the first day read to be like a total freeze on all spending to all grants, with the exception of, as you mentioned, Social Security, Medicare, military. They updated that 24 hours later to, only include. There was like this weird line about like only include grant. We're freezing grants to non-government organizations that are not advancing the interests of America. It was like a very Orbanist sort of sentence. Like, well,
yes,
what's that? Oh, who counts in that? So it's still very vague. As part of that, the Medicaid system, I guess payment system was down for a while. I guess that's now back up. We just discussed there was a firing of, I think, over a dozen of the inspectors general. There was the firing of over a dozen people that were a part of the investigations against Trump. There have been some pretty ham-fisted ICE raids, including detention of Puerto Ricans who are American citizens that Adrian has been covering for us. Then there was yesterday this, it seems to be written by Elon Musk because it like is read exactly the same as what he sent to Twitter employees. It was the same subject line. There's a fork in the road. There's a message to people like, you can quit by February 6th if you want. If you just say resign and we'll pay you a severance. There's questions about all that's legal. So all this has happened. And it's like, and so there's the question of like, okay, well, what if this will actually end up affecting people, in a month? Who's to say, right? Because most of it is unconstitutional or illegal, and the stuff that is legal is written in such a way that it's like we don't actually know how to interpret it because they don't really know how to interpret it. So to circle back to your question, I think the more that they actually do, the worse it is for him. Yeah. Right. I honestly, right. Because his best position in all of this is to put up a lot of smoke and have, a lot of people like us clutch our pearls about it and talk about how fascism is coming and then have like not that much change in people's day-to-day lives. And then he's like, see these crazy, alarmists and whatever. The only people for whom lives are really changing are asylees and and trans people, like people that are vulnerable, but the vast majority of Americans don't experience it. Like that is his best position. If they actually do the Rust vote stuff, right, and like Meals on Wheels is shut down, I do think the more of that they do, the worse it is. So that I guess that's and the more then maybe a backlash starts to emerge. That's kind of my view. I don't know what you think about that.
So remember in the first term, we all talked about how Trump had picked a lock in a sense about American politics. He said, what needs to happen to the Republican Party is it needs to stop all this talk about cutting government. People love their government services. Right. And Trump's great insight was, I'm not going to cut anything. You can vote for me and you won't have to, worry about that. I'm not interested in the budget deficit or cutting spending. And sure enough, during the first Trump term, he didn't cut anything and he ballooned the deficit. But now he's brought in these, Project 2025 crew and Russ Vought and all of this. And they are fanatics who want to drastically cut government. And so there is, I think, going to be a little bit of a contradiction going on here. The communists used to say we have to maximize the contradictions of capitalism. Well, we're going to see them maximizing the contradictions within Trumpism because part of Trumpism is you'll never have to feel any pain. I will never cut anything you like. And, that is coming hard up against this new sweeping, let's go in there and just set the whole thing on fire.
Yeah, they're betting. And Sonny Bunch and I were talking about this on Slack. They bet here, and this is from the Elon and Russ vote perspective, is that they can do what Elon did at Twitter. And say I'm gonna cut a huge part of the staff, and most people won't notice any difference. Like there'll be some things that are annoying, there'll be more Nazis on the platforms. I don't want to minimize it, right? The search function won't work quite as well as it used to, but like all things considered, like most people's lives weren't disrupted by the fact that some Twitter engineers were cut. Like the government isn't quite the same as that, right? Like there are certainly some parts of the government can be cut where people's lives wouldn't be disruptive, but you're talking about payments to Medicaid systems, talking about who knows what's going to be happening with this bird flu going around, right? Like the other services. I got news for you. There are a lot of red state MAGA Americans that rely on various government services in different ways, right?
Exactly.
And I think this, like the way in which they're going about this is, I think betrays a misunderstanding of something that Trump just kind of got instinctively, and that they don't because they have an actual ideological perspective.
Yeah, 100%. And I would just add that, it is sort of a staple of right-wing commentary, to dunk on, bureaucrats. I mean, Reagan used to make jokes about federal bureaucrats, and some of them were pretty funny,
Yes.
like they were saying there's so many bureaucrats, like a guy is crying at his desk at the Department of Agriculture, and somebody says, "What's the matter?" And he says, "My farmer died." So that was 40 years ago or more. But the fact is, the truth, the dirty little secret of how we do things in our federal government is we actually don't have more bureaucrats now than we had like 40 years ago. Right. We don't have a huge amount of bureaucrats. We do it through private contractors. Yeah. And, maybe some of them are not efficient. I'm sure they're not. Government is never as efficient as a private business by its very nature, and it never will be, no matter how many Elon Musks you try to bring in, because the incentives are different. But the fact is that they can't just, like, you can't just say, I'm going to fire 20% of the federal workforce and then it'll all be leaner and meaner. No, it doesn't. That's
right. We also just went through sequestration, by the way. You know what I mean? If we're going to get really nerdy about the budget stuff, like the real budget problems are the big ticket items, right? Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, defense. Like we already sort of did the, again, there's more stuff that could be cut, but like the sequestration that happened, 10 years ago, sort of covered a lot of the Doge, the things that would be under the Doge remit. But this takes us to, I did want to bring this up. So we both have been kind of dancing around it. I had Chris Hayes on yesterday. I've got my friend Tehran Tommy Vitor on tomorrow. So I was like, we're sandwiched. We got libs all around us. And so I did want your kind of perspective on this. Like, I don't know, my conservative muscles were flexing a little bit when it came to, the letter goes out from Elon, or from not from Elon, but from Elon, that's saying people, all right, you got to actually come into the office to work. And if you don't want to come into the office to work, then that's fine. We'll pay you an 8-month severance and you can leave. And there's a lot of outrage about this. And there's a little part of me that was like, I don't know. That seems like a pretty good deal. That seems like a pretty good deal. I don't know. I mean, there are other problems with it, but I'm wondering, are there any of your conservative muscles flexing when you're hearing stuff like that?
Okay. So 100%, not that part in particular, because I don't know, it's very much of a sledgehammer, and you would need to know in particular cases whether these particular workers need to be in the office. I don't know.
Sure.
But I'll tell you, I do not like DEI stuff. I think it is destructive. I think it's a really, really bad idea to encourage people to think in racial terms, and both to encourage, minorities to think of themselves as oppressed, and to encourage majorities to think of themselves as guilty. I mean, I don't think that's healthy for society. But, so I would have, if I had a magic wand, I'd get rid of all DEI programs. That doesn't mean I'd get rid of affirmative action. That's different.
Sure.
But DEI is a particular thing. By the way, it also encourages anti-Semitism in many instances. It's a mess. Okay. But there is a difference between saying, I like this particular outcome, or I agree that DEI is very problematic, and doing something in a completely high-handed, lawless way. If Congress has mandated programs, then you can't just change it. You have to ask Congress to rescind it. By the way, last time I checked, he has control of both houses, right?
Right.
I mean,
just do it.
So just change the effing law.
Yeah, just do it. No, but they can't. They can't, because it goes back to the contradictions of Trumpism. There's certain stuff that is liked in a lot of this. Yeah, I'm with you. I just so my position is clear on all this. There's some really dumb DEI stuff. We've been covering this. I do think that, and again, it's like terms, what rubric. There's some value in the federal government in certain elements of this, right? Like the CIA needs people that can speak different languages, right? The FBI, it should be good for them to have a leadership program for people that come from marginalized communities, from urban centers, right? Like there's certain elements of it that are pernicious and certain that are good. And I
That's
feel that way.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel this way about the firings too. Like, again, if there were actual smart people and experts, if they were going to do this how they did it in, the fucking American president or in the Clinton administration or in the right, you know what I mean? Like Democrats used to do this, right? They would be like, we're going to bring in experts. We're going to review the books. We're going to look at to see, which of these programs are outdated or not efficient anymore, not working. We're going to offer people severance and let them go. Sure. Like I'm for all of that. Right. I'm for all that. It is, but these guys have taken that from us because what they are trying to do with this is not actually make the government more efficient. They're trying to bully good and smart people out of the government so that they can replace them with Buckley Carlson, Tucker's son, or whoever. You know what I mean?
Yes, Tim, 100% true. And also, let's recall that the part of the government that they are focusing on is such a small part of the federal budget. I mean, if they were actually serious about cutting spending, and we do seriously have a debt problem, then they would be grown-ups and say, okay, we got to talk about reforming Social Security and Medicare. But as we said earlier, they're not doing that. They won't do that. All of this other stuff is just nibbling around the edges, honestly, if it's a matter of cost savings. I mean, on the matter of policy,
sure,
it is significant.
All right. There you go, people. Sorry. You have to hear about entitlement reform if you're going to come to the Bulwark podcast. All right. You got Tommy tomorrow. Okay, Lebs. All right. We're going to do a little entitlement reform once a week. All right. Here we go. You also wrote this week about birthright citizenship. I did want to just talk to you about that just briefly. Because to me, birthright, to the type of the way that I was drawn to conservatism, birthright citizenship was so entwined in kind of like me as an 80s, 90s kid growing up, like the conservative worldview, right? It's like this, the shining city on the hill, the greatness of America. We want people to come here. Like that was just really directly to me tied with my identification with why this was, an appealing movement. And it is now like that part is just gone now, and so I was just interested in hearing you kind of talk about that because I think to some people, particularly younger people, right, if you're one of those kids of the MAGA TPUSA thing that I went to, the culture is so changed and the rhetoric has so changed around conservative politics that it's probably hard for them to even understand why a conservative would be for birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just wanted to hear you riff on the article a little bit.
Right. So what I was trying to say is that, first of all, throat clearing, there's the whole problem of it being completely unconstitutional to try to change this via executive order. It's
Did you see, just really quick on this, did you see Caroline Leavitt yesterday? This is the first press conference. I got to give her one thing. She was much better than Spicer. So kudos to you for being much better, Spicer. And she also, this will be just for my elder millennial listeners, Mona. So I don't know if you ever watched Cruel Intentions, but she has the Sarah Michelle Gellar vibe from Cruel Intentions just down totally. But now I will say, I don't think that she has in the movie, and Sarah Michelle Gellar had in the cross necklace cocaine that she would do to kind of drive home the point about how fake it was. I'm not accusing Caroline of that, but besides that, she had the whole vibe down. But anyway, she just bluntly was like, yeah, this administration sees birthright citizenship as unconstitutional. It's like, what? That it's really up is down Orwell stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So first of all, it's completely bogus. And so said a Reagan-appointed federal judge, said this was laughable. But the other part of it, though, is kind of a matter of the meaning of America. And that is exactly what the executive order was labeling. The meaning of American citizenship, they said they were upholding. Actually, they are destroying it because birthright citizenship is tied up with the fact that we are a nation of immigrants. We are a nation of people who came here and became Americans. We were something else before. Everybody except Native Americans came here. And this is not a country of blood and soil. It's not, that we all have the same ethnicity or ancestry or language or color or any of that. It's that we have chosen to be part of this great experiment. And every person who is born here is as legitimate and perfect and pure and American as any descendant of the Mayflower. And that is a very equalizing concept. And it's important, I think, to maintain that, because otherwise we're going to have tiers of citizens. We're going to have the people who can trace their ancestry back many generations, and then they are the real Americans, and then everybody else is something else. That is antithetical to my perception of what this country is about.
Amen. All right. We got to move on to the hearings that we've got coming this week. I would just sort of start. I don't know if I've played the ranking game with you. Hegseth's already in, unfortunately, so he's off of the board. But we've got Kash Patel, Tulsi, and RFK. If you had a magic wand and you got to protect the country from one of them, who would be first, who would be second, and who would you stick us with?
Okay, so Tulsi, I would put at the top. That she is the most dangerous because she has, the one thing you want above everything else is good judgment in a post like that, where you are in charge of our secrets. And she has shown appalling judgment in her sidling up to a vicious murderer like Hafez Assad, in her defense of Edward Snowden, in her willingness to be a mouthpiece for Putin, such that the TV people on RT call her our girlfriend. That
RT being Russia Today,
Russia Today. That is who Trump thinks should be entrusted with our secrets. It is like something out of The Onion. It is so beyond belief. But because we live in the world we do, we've had members on the Hill sort of quietly saying, well, I have my hesitations, I have doubts, rather than saying, this is a goddamn outrage. Under no circumstances will she be, whatever. But look, I guess we have to take what we can get. We've heard, even Trump total patsies like Lindsey Graham express reservations. So let's see what happens.
All right. We've got RFK today. And as I mentioned at the top, we'll have a live debrief, a TNL live debrief on YouTube tonight at 8 p.m. And you can get that on the Next Levels feed tomorrow. But I want to just play for you a little bit, maybe a little highlight reel of RFK.
I think some of the live virus vaccines are probably averting more problems than they're causing. There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and Black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. A woman in a van in front of me hit a bear and killed it. Pulled over, and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear. I realized I couldn't go home. I had to go to the airport. I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park, and we'll make it look like he got hit by a plane. The next day, it was like, it was on every television station. I mean, there's cell phone tumors. But cancer's not the worst thing. They also, it opens up, Wi-Fi radiation opens up your blood-brain barrier. And so all these toxins that are in your body can now go into your brain.
How does Wi-Fi radiation open up your blood-brain barrier?
Yeah, now you're going beyond my expertise.
I love that one at the end. It's beyond his expertise. He floats the fact that our blood-brain barriers are being opened by the Wi-Fi. In an interview, but then he's like, it's kind of beyond my expertise, and that sort of sums it up, right? We just have a just asking questions conspiracist who's going to be in charge of the health department of the U.S.
Yeah. Who doesn't believe in pasteurization? We might as well just, go back to the 18th century, I guess.
How was life expectancy back then? Was it better or worse than now? Can I see a chart?
So it is mind-boggling, RFK. And then the other point, and this was a point that was actually made by the Wall Street Journal, which deserves opprobrium for having not opposed Trump's election, but they are saying appropriately that the other angle that you have to pay attention to on RFK is the money angle, that he has been raising all of these conspiracy theories about vaccines, for example, as a way to personally profit, because then he sues the manufacturers and they settle with him. And he's made millions this way. So it is, and his cousin, Caroline Kennedy Schlossberg, gave an impassioned
we actually
statement.
have a clip of that. Let's just listen to a little bit of that. Let's actually listen to this one.
And Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, agencies that are charged with protecting the most vulnerable among us, is an enormous responsibility and one that Bobby is unqualified to fill. He lacks any relevant government, financial, management, or medical experience. His views on vaccines are dangerous and willfully misinformed. These facts alone should be disqualifying. But he has personal qualities related to this job, which for me pose even greater concern. I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together. It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator.
Whoa.
That's
other than
amazing.
that, Mrs. Lincoln. I mean,
yeah.
Whoa. She goes on to talk about his drug problems, says that he got over them, but many of our family members that he exposed to the drugs did not. Talks about his weird animal killing fetishes, and she also gets into the money aspect of it and how he's
the money.
collected.
And also she points out that while he encourages other people not to vaccinate their kids, he vaccinated all of his own kids.
Yeah.
What a piece of,
I just want to say I've been keeping a scorecard over here. 1 full curse from Mona, 2 near curses, 0 from me so far. So
I give you the times we're living in. It's driven me to this.
It does remind me of the weird of all of the ones. It wasn't included in the mashup. But my favorite Bobby Kennedy is related to him vaccinating his own kids. Is the time that he talks about how he goes hiking in LA. And he goes up to strangers with children and tells them not to vaccinate their children. Like that is insane. Over the bear killing and the beheading of the whales and all the vaccine. Like to me, it's just like to go up to a mother with a baby and accost them about vaccination status. For whatever reason, that is the one to me that is the worst.
Yeah. And by the way, the Bulwark gave a lot of coverage to what happened in Samoa, but people should familiarize themselves with that because he has blood on his hands already. He encouraged this conspiracy about the vaccines being unsafe in Samoa, and hundreds, I think, or at least scores of babies died of measles in that outbreak. And it's down to him. And that is... that's a great, thank you, Mr. Trump. That's a great idea for who should be in charge of our health care agencies. Thank you.
Well, I'm monitoring closely the senator from my state now, Louisiana, Dr. Bill Cassidy. I expect nothing. I expect him to go along and rubber stamp this. But I do want to say, when people are like, there's no other alternative option. Cassidy, in Louisiana, we have a top 2 primary situation, right? So it's like kind of a different system where it's a jungle primary, everybody votes.
Oh, that's good.
And I think Cassidy voted to convict Trump. So yes. I think Cassidy is boned no matter what, if it's a straight Republican primary situation. So people don't mention him. He is actually free to vote his conscience. He is a doctor. And to me, there is an outside chance. I don't think it's a great chance. There's an outside chance that he could run for governor in 3 years and get into a top 2 situation where it's like a MAGA person in him, where he gets a coalition of Democrats and normal Republicans. I think I want to say that's a very outside chance, but I don't think that's that's a I don't think he's less likely to win going that route than by trying to MAGA himself after he voted to convict Donald Trump. So anyway, Bill Cassidy will be watching you.
Does the jungle primary system basically amount to the same thing as like Alaska, where they have ranked choice voting, or
no ranked choice? It's like California. It's everybody runs, all parties run in the first vote, and then the top two, you have a runoff with the top two. So in a place like California, you could have 2 Democrats. In a place like Louisiana, you could have 2 Republicans in the top 2.
Gotcha. Yeah. But it means that he doesn't necessarily have to be beholden to the MAGA base, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just you mentioned we're chatting on Slack. Anything on the Trump pivot with regards to Russia and Putin and sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, Putin, Trump made a statement about Putin and Ukraine that surprised people because it was kind of tough sounding, whereas he's never sounded like that toward Putin before. And it's just such a window into Trump's soul because, remember, Trump admires aggression and wickedness, honestly. When Putin rolled his tanks into Ukraine, let's not forget, Trump was giddy with excitement over this act of naked aggression. And he called it genius. And he said, wow, this is great. And only later did he sort of try to clean it up. That's who he is. And I just feel that if the war were going better for Putin right now than it is, that Trump would not have sounded the note that he did. But what he is now feeling is disappointment in Putin for not having won.
Yeah. Then you saw the statements coming out of Russia are basically, I think they think they have his number. There was a conventional wisdom that they thought they had a deal. That Putin was like, all right, I got this guy in, we got a deal. I think they think, no, we can push forward, but Trump's not going to find the political will to push back on us. So
we'll see. But yeah, that's another area of the contradictions of Trumpism, because, on the one hand, he claims no more wars, but then he also wants to credibly threaten other countries, right? And you can't have it both ways, right? You can't credibly threaten if you say, I will never engage in war. So there we are.
All right, everybody. Thanks to Mona Charen. I already mentioned we got Tom Eat Up tomorrow, and we've got a full slate of over on YouTube of live streaming these hearings. Mona will be on for a little while tomorrow. I'll be on for a little while tomorrow. So come hang out with us. One more thing, just since we've been on coming across here, my colleague Adrian Carrasquillo has this story about Trump turning schools into an immigration battleground. It's heart-wrenching. So you can go check that out at thebulwark.com. Thank you, Mona. Everybody else, we'll be seeing you around here tomorrow. Peace.